Guys, we have today a special guest, Jailyn Mason, who is now a senior photojournalism major here at the University of Arkansas, and she is still you because you had a red shirt, isn't that right, Jailyn?
Yep. So I'm in my 5th year.
You're in your 5th year and I remember you in your very first year.
Yes, so long ago.
So long ago, right? And you also had the experience 4 years ago of being a part of the Lady Razorback team that knelt during a basketball game. I remember that distinctly because I received a call just a few hours before that game, letting me know it was going to happen. I asked him, what do you want me to do about it? So, so it was an FYI, Dr. Robinson, can you help? And I'm thinking, well, what? They made the decision, so we just have to honor it. So I'm going to get out of the way and let you share your thoughts. And I know students submitted some questions to you, and we'll just go from here.
Okay. So I'm kind of admitting people right now because I'm a co-host. Right. I have a PowerPoint, so you'll see that while I'm talking. But I guess we can just kind of get right into it. Just let me know if. Okay, can you guys see my PowerPoint?
Yes, it says kneeling for our beliefs with a picture.
Right. Okay. So like Dr. Robinson said, my name is Jailyn Mason. I am what I call super senior. I play for the women's basketball team. I just graduated with a degree in journalism, and I am working on my 2nd degree in communications right now. Very excited to be able to have 2 degrees after I finish up this year. But I'm here to talk about when I kneeled my freshman year during the national anthem. So I guess we'll just kind of start right into it. So when this happened, I was a freshman, 2016 year, the year that Colin Kaepernick decided that he was going to kneel during the NFL season. Sorry, I'm still admitting people. And it all kind of started when our coaches came up to us one day, and it was probably a week before our very first game. And they were like, we know that people are talking about this. It's happening in the professional leagues. We just want to know what you guys want to do because we'll be there to support you if you decide to do it, which we'll get into the support afterwards. But so we decided to have a team meeting before one of our practices. And I guess the timing of each of our meetings is kind of important. We only had probably about 30 to 45 minutes before every day, and afterwards, obviously, if you wanted to talk to our teammates on our own. But our first conversations happened with our head coach, like I said, just kind of saying that if we wanted to do it, we can, he'll be there, yada, yada, yada. Our next meeting was with the 2 African-American women coaches that we had, and just kind of telling us about their experiences that they've had getting into coaching, how it's hard, how they've experienced racism in this coaching world, how it doesn't, differ from anyone in any section of jobs that you're in. So we talked about that, kind of like the emotional part that would be handled would probably be coming from them if we needed any emotional support and that kind of stuff. And then our next conversations were with the 2 African-American male coaches that we had. And one of them was a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive in his approach, but he was very passionate about what he believed in, and kind of was very blunt about what was happening in our country and how minority people were getting discriminated against and killed by police officers. So that conversation was probably the most emotional that we had. But all of these coaches, except for one, had kids of their own. So we kind of talked about that. Two of them had sons. So, that kind of hit home where male African Americans were being targeted by police. So after those conversations, we had team conversations, and those got a little bit, I will say, aggressive in that count. We had all of the white people wanted to stand. 6 of us wanted to kneel. And it was a really hard conversation to have because the reasons that the white women on my team wanted to stand was because they didn't want to disrespect the flag, which is a narrative that we hear all over the news and what we know is not, the reason behind kneeling. And that they had family in the military and that kind of stuff. But we were trying to explain to them, I have family that served in the military. I have a firefighter for an uncle, Kiera, who graduated with me. Both of her parents are police officers in Little Rock. And we all had a tie to military somewhere in our lineage. So it was really hard to kind of have that conversation because we were like, you clearly know this is not the reason. If it was disrespectful to the military, we wouldn't do it, because why would we want to, disrespect our own family? That's not, what people do. So it turned to be a little aggressive sometimes. We seemed at one point that all of us were going to stand just because we didn't really want to deal with arguing with each other, arguing with our coaches, and eventually arguing with the media and everything else that we see. So the 6 of us decided that we were going to do it. We did it, and the reaction was, as probably you could expect from being in the South. And I'm from Ohio, so this kind of hit home for me because there was a man that was shot at the University of Cincinnati, and that's about 25 minutes away from where I'm from. And just kind of the things that were running through my head was, what if that was somebody I went to high school with, one of my brothers? So it was a really big decision. I'm proud of it. But I think in these next slides, you'll see as I explain the struggles that kind of came with it. So now that we have some background. Oh, come on. All right, hold on. Sorry, guys. Okay, so in these next couple slides are going to be screenshots of some things from like Razorback websites or Facebook. And these all came from my mom because she was very scared for me when I was on campus. Didn't really want me to leave the dorms unless I was with somebody, or my boyfriend was with me to walk me to the door, or I was with a group of people to go to practice or something like that. But so the first one that we've always seen is the national anthem and the veterans versus kneeling. So that's a lot of people's argument for us not kneeling during the anthem, to be disrespectful of those who served in the military. Like I said, we know that's not the reason for kneeling, but it is a narrative that was placed in the media, and a lot of people ran with it. So I'm just going to give you guys a moment to read this while I stop talking. Okay. And so the next one that kind of happened is we had an attack on the university leadership. There were personal attacks made on our AD at the time, Jeff Long, against Chancellor Steinmetz, because they came out and gave support, saying that the University of Arkansas is an institution that no matter what we believe in personally, we will not, stop anyone from voicing their own opinion. And then, as you can see in like the second box, there was a comparison between us kneeling and the firing of head football coach Bobby Petrino, which I'm pretty sure a lot of us are familiar with happened. Had his side lady on his motorcycle. So it was interesting to see kind of that comparison made as well. I'll give you guys a second to read over that. And next, we have attacks on the players. So there were comments about our scholarships being taken away, where we would end up in life because of this decision. As you can see, people called us thugs, followers, saying our scholarships should be taken away. We were going to end up in the hood, things like that. And that continued on with people wishing that our athletic careers ended with injuries, as John Wilkerson so beautifully put it, that we would blow our knees out for the season and give us a reason to take a knee. And then on the right, some people suggested that there were outside activities saying how we earned our scholarships instead of our athletic ability. And then yes, SpongeBob was used. And then this one, I'm pretty sure this is the last one on some Facebook posts, but someone took it as far as telling us that, you know, we should leave the country, which a lot of people say when they think you disrespect the flag, or they would give us 2 to the head, which I'm pretty sure everybody here understands what that means. So I'll give you a second to read that. And so lastly, what kind of came from the kneeling is Project Unify. I met with Dr. Robinson in order to try to begin this, but it started with me and my mom kind of having a conversation about what the next step was. Didn't want to just kneel at every game and, you know, people boo us or something like that. We wanted action, because you can't have a stand without having something to back it up. So we came up with Project Unify, and the point of it was to bring the community and the law enforcement together and kind of create this united front with the two, because at this point, you know, there's not a lot of minorities in Fayetteville, and that is something that I didn't really notice when I visited, but something that I did after this happened. And so I wanted the minority group to feel comfortable around the people that were protecting them, and I wanted the other people to be allies and understand where people were coming from. So just kind of to be this united front, and it was supposed to become an event created after kind of these little meetings between resources on campus. But unfortunately, as you can see at the bottom, it got turned into a Veterans Appreciation Breakfast. Kind of the complete opposite of what I was intending for it to be. And what was kind of sad about the whole situation is I brought it to my team. We had the 6 of us were very excited to start it. There was a consensus among the rest of my team that they were on board with everything happening. And then kind of as soon as our season started, the support went away, and we didn't know who to talk to on campus to continue the conversations and to continue getting resources, and to make it seem better to the public, we had to include veterans and make this a thing, which I'm not saying that a Veterans Appreciation Breakfast is wrong, because it's a great thing to do, but it was not what this was intended for. So yeah, Project Unify has not really been brought up other than my freshman year. And I can tell you now, I take fault in that because I didn't push it as I should have. But I'll also say I was freshman. I didn't really know what was happening. I wanted to play basketball and I did not want people to hate me. So, but that was kind of the experience that I was receiving. So let me stop sharing this because that's done. So yeah, really the experience overall, it was life-changing. It put me in a lot of different groups now that I'm in the SEC, to help make a change with things that are happening now, especially with the election that just ended. So I think it put me in a position to help me realize that I want to fight for things. I like community engagement. I'm a chair of community engagement for our SAC group. So it kind of started me in this direction of helping others. So I'm very happy for the decision that I made, even though it was very difficult. And as you can see with the PowerPoint, a little traumatizing with the things that were said back to me. But I think I answered some of your guys' question. There's a long list. I have it here, but I'm really open to answering whatever from whoever. And I have plenty of time. So anyone wants a
Hey,
question?
Jailyn, could you
Yes.
talk about the others who kneeled with you? What happened to those students after the kneeling?
I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of our emotions were really high when we were making decisions. And I think some people, I don't want to speak for them, but the actions that kind of happened afterward, I think they were a little afraid. They wanted to focus on basketball. Some of them were unhappy with Arkansas in general, transferred afterwards. So it kind of was the icing on top of everything that happened to them beforehand. But I think now I've had conversations with them about what's kind of happening in our country right now, and it seems to kind of be moving in the same way. We have really high like conversations about what's going on when things are happening that are bad, and then when things die down, everything else starts to die down. Our conversations die down. So I think that's one really important piece of protesting is you have to not go down and everything else goes down. You have to continue to push forward and create those actions that are, going to help what you believe in and pushing it forward. Anyone else?
You said, they were unhappy. Some of your co-players were unhappy. How did you feel about Arkansas after that incident? As you said, you were, and that was just mean and nasty things would break down. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's just
It's okay.
not right. But
Yeah.
what has kept you here?
Like with the school, how do I feel about the school?
Yeah, the program, the school, things in general.
Yeah, well, my coach got fired the next year. So I've had a different coach for the past 4 years. And I would honestly say that over the past 3 years, the Black Lives Matter movement has been at a lower standpoint. Not as many things have happened. They pop up when, something bad happens. But like I said, we get in those kind of lulls. But now, the coach that I have now, he's very open to listening to everybody's opinion, wanting us to sit down, talk about different things that bother us about what's happening. So I think that's great. And I won't say that my last coach didn't do that, but I don't think he was as aware as my new coach is. My last coach, he was a very conservative man. We had lesbian women on our team, and after my freshman year, I found out he always wanted them to dress in women, like very feminine clothing, have like a sew-in or their hair down and stuff like that, that I don't think I realized my freshman year would be degrading to somebody else. So I think it's very different like lives and how they grew up. And I also say that for our AD. We have a new AD. Jeff Long got fired as well. But I think that Jeff Long did a good job in Chancellor Steinmetz in putting out those reports or those statements saying that they agreed with us. But I would say there was a lack in support afterwards, lack in Project Unify, lack in anything but an initial statement. So it is hard to do that because they're not on Facebook or Razorback, whatever, seeing posts like that made. So it's hard for them to be as active. But I also think that was our coach's job in telling them, like, this stuff is happening. Our players are being threatened, and we need a bigger stance than just a statement from you. So I go back and forth on how I feel about it as I get older. But I think at first I was very unaware of the administration and how they reacted to everything else. I was just kind of focused on me, how I was feeling about it, how me and my mom were communicating, how my family felt about it. So it was, it's back and forth, which is hard.
I remember you continued to protest, but not kneel.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, can you talk about that decision? Because I remember you had some shirts and you had a moment of silence that was added to the pregame. So how did you come to that decision to modify your approach to protest?
Yeah, so our next game was our veterans game. Is that what it is? Yeah, it's our veterans appreciation game or something like that. So we were told we're not kneeling. You will not be kneeling. That is not something that we're going to do at this time. We see the backlash that you got. It's just, we're not going for it. And we had shirts designed, and we have shirts designed every year for this occasion. I can't remember what the shirt said, but I think it had stand in it somewhere. And it was very ironic for what we just did. And it was really hard for the 6 of us that knelt because we felt as if we made this sacrifice for ourselves. We were told that we would be supported in every way possible from our coaches. And that kind of got flipped. So that's why I say I go back and forth on how I feel about it. Because we were given a lot of support at the beginning, and then when we had a veterans game, it was not so much. So that moment of silence, I agreed to it. I liked it. I knew that we were gonna have to somehow get our fans to be on board with what we were doing, and that was probably the most, I won't say logical, but easiest way to do it. But it kind of made me look at my coaches a little bit different. And it made me think, I had all these African American people around me saying that they understood how I felt, they understood what I was going through, they feel that at their home. And then it's like, well, you really care more about your job than you do about my beliefs, your beliefs. And I would say that's a lot of people. They care about money more than they care about being morally correct. And I think we can see this in our election, but I'll leave that for another time. So it was hard, and I left this part out, but I didn't tell my mom that I was doing this. It was a decision solely based on what I wanted to do. And my mom comes to every game, so she was there when it happened, and she was like, "What are you doing?" Not that she didn't agree with me or my reasoning behind it, she just didn't know it was happening. And so all of this heat that I got back, she was extremely scared, especially being 12 hours from home. But she was very supportive. She had me explain to her kind of why I felt the way that I did, because I grew up in a predominantly white area. Black people were the lowest percentage at my school. And honestly, I went to like a rich white school for like the biggest public school in Ohio. So I never had any bad run-ins with police officers, the law. I was a good person, whatever. And so she just couldn't understand. And I had to explain to her, I have 2 stepbrothers. Both of them play football. One of them is almost 300 pounds, 6'7", plays in the NFL. If you would see him, he would be intimidating to you just because you don't know him, but he's like the biggest teddy bear in the world to everybody, super nice. And she, like, when we have conversations about it now, she'll be like, it clicked for me when you said somebody else who doesn't know him would probably shoot him if something happened. And so that was a very like emotional point for me because that's not her kid. She doesn't know him as well as I do. It's my stepbrother. So it was just like the whole situation was very emotional and very difficult. And it was emotional after not getting the support either. So it kind of made my freshman year difficult. If that makes sense.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go back and do anything differently, whether it be the kneeling or how you handle things afterwards, sticking with the protesting or not, how would you do it?
I would do everything the same, I think. But I would really push my project forward. I don't think, and I would say that I was scared as a freshman, not really knowing what was going on and who to believe when things were being said, and not knowing who my resources were. I'd only been on campus for a couple months, so I didn't know who to go to. But I think really pushing and finding out somebody who was going to back up my project, whether that meant I go to the police station on my own and I talk to the police chief or whoever. I find a group of minority students in elementary schools or something like that. But I think that would be the biggest piece that I would want to change, is finding those resources that we're gonna eventually put Project Unify in a position now that we can have events every year. You know, one big event, little events. And I do think it's something that I can do now, knowing who my resources are. It's just about finding time, and you know, it's an important thing to do. So you got to make time when you believe in something. Hopefully that answered it.
But do you think that if you would have pushed your project with like more concerted effort, do you worry that you would have faced like even harsher like pushback that may have like jeopardized your your education, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I think back to like, you know, like Colin Kaepernick, right, was eventually you know, let go, right? He was just dropped.
I do wonder about that, but I think what would have pushed it over the edge for me to have my scholarship taken away or something like that is if I would have continued kneeling. I think that would have pushed people kind of over the edge and been like, she needs to really get out of Arkansas, that kind of thing. So I'm not saying that I would continue to kneel, because I think once I did, it started a conversation, and for people to kind of go back and forth. And honestly, that's something that we need in our country. We need conversations to start in order for people's beliefs to be brought forward or talked about, argued about, whatever. But I don't think if I would have continued on with that project that I would have gotten my scholarship taken. I think that that's something people in Fayetteville, people at the University of Arkansas would have backed up. And I don't know, people might have not liked me even if I did that. That's okay. I'm kind of okay with people not liking me. It's all right. But I don't know. I think if I would have continued to kneel, though, it would have jeopardized a lot of things that I have had now.
Yeah, it's an exceptionally difficult position.
It was. And being 18, fresh out of high school, making a decision like that in a place that I have never been to in my entire life since I came on my visit, it was difficult to see that kind of backlash because I've never experienced something like that before. And it was weird to handle. But I had my mom, which she's my biggest supporter, So she kind of helped me through that, and her support overruled the lack of support that I had from my coaches, if that makes sense.
Besides your mom, who did you, because you said it's 12 hours, right? 12 hours away from where you are from. So besides your mom, who did you have here on campus throughout and after you progressed to look, to look to when things got a little tough? Because it is exhausting.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you probably not a lot of people. My boyfriend's family is here. Both his brother and his wife teach. So I was over there a lot talking with them. And one of them is an African American history teacher. So having them there to kind of just express my feelings and having people that I could go to feel comfortable and safe in an area was important. But I would say I did have my teammates. The 6 of us kind of really stuck together, and we talked about how we felt during this time, how angry we were, how upset we were. People, I mean, the older ones weren't as scared as I was because they've been here before. They kind of know how to handle their situations. But I honestly say on campus, I didn't really have anyone that I trusted at that point. I was new, like I said, only on campus since the summer. Hadn't really made connections where I felt those kind of conversations could be had, which I think if I did have them, the relationships that I do have now, I think it would have been a lot easier. Maybe not easier, but I would have been able to take some weight off of my shoulders and have someone to kind of walk me through what I should do next.
The whole being here first year, I guess I need to explain myself. I'm from pretty far away too. And after my visit, well, not as far away as you were. I'm from 5 hours away in Magnolia, Arkansas. But after my first visit here, which took pretty great pains to get here, I didn't even notice that there was a lack of diversity. Like you said, on the visit, I wasn't even thinking about that. But when I got here, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, this is what my family was joking about. So, and again, I never really looked at anything like that until all this started really happening. I guess you could say I tried to run away from it because I hadn't experienced it, because I grew up in a my town was kind of half and half, but the school system was more or less kind of segregated-ish. Like, we all went to the same school, but the classes were low-key segregated, tracked or whatever. But so I didn't really know anything like this. I guess it's like that book that just came out recently, The Black Kids, with Christina Hammond-Reed. I'll probably put a link in it. But with all of this going on and it being new, like as a freshman, and even now, honestly, because it's 4 years later and it's still happening, what do you do to relax? I mean, like some people do songs. People, I mean, I've heard that sports and exercise can help with mental health. And I need to get back to playing something. I don't know. I miss soccer. I can't really do it. What do you?
I will say that over the years, well, finding, let me figure out how I want to go about this. I would say you need to find your group of people that you connect with on a level that you would be able to share your grievances with. Lucky for me, I am on a team, and that, bolsters friendship and understanding, and you go through some, part of my language, you go through some shit together on the court. So you have this family. But like I said, my boyfriend has family here, so being able to go to them and kind of feel that family presence, even though it's not mine, but to be able to be around them and just acknowledge that I'm in this family. I can, be me and cry if I need to cry, yell if I need to yell, or whatever. But I would definitely say you need to find your group, and exercise does help. You go punch a punching bag if you need to. It's great. I punch my pillow sometimes if I get too upset. But yeah, as a freshman, it was hard. I loved that team. But we were very mixed, very old, very young. So it was kind of hard to find that balance between the two. I was starting, they were ending. So they were kind of doing their own thing, and we were coming up trying to figure out life. But yes, definitely find your people. And our department is super great. We have 3 psychologists that if you need anything, night or day, you call them, whatever. And they've been huge in everything that's happening now. We have this app called Teamworks, where you get your schedule, you get messages from people in the athletic department, and I think probably 4 times a week we get a message from the head psychologist talking about schedule with us if you need to schedule. We have a Zoom going over election stress, how to handle it, which has been amazing. I haven't been on them yet, but I feel like I need to after today.
Said it's called Teamworks.
Yes, it's called Teamworks. I don't know if it's available to everyone. I know all of our teams are on it, but I don't know where other psychologists are on campus. But I will always, always, always advocate for therapy. You should do it, because there are traumas that you don't even know that you have had in your life that are going on. Black Lives Matter versus the KKK, Antifa, all of it. It is stressful to hear about it every single day on the news, and you don't understand how those little things pile up and make you feel until you talk about them. So find your people and go to therapy.
The questions that the press asked you after that game, they were quite like challenging in terms of just answering them, and some of them were, I don't know, it's my personal opinion that they were not worded right, and like it was basically like setup. Do you feel that? And if so, what did you do to prepare for those answers?
Yeah. I would say that I wasn't in the initial interview after our game. So that was Karen Swinson, Kiara Williams, and Jordan Danbury, if I'm remembering correctly. And you are correct. The media will always ask you questions that will fit to give you an answer that fits to what they're trying to say. It was hard. I would say that only knowing the media from where I'm from and being covered for basketball only makes it difficult to answer questions about your beliefs, especially when we had no training in it, when which is something I think we should have had before our game, when we talked about we're kneeling, we're doing this, we're doing that. The only thing that we kind of said is when the media comes up, we have to have a united front. People who stood need to say, we stand with the people that kneeled, we respect the people that stand. There was nothing deeper, which I think is something that we lacked. And I think anybody in the sports world needs media training. I think everybody needs media training when you go on a job. So I think we put ourselves at a disadvantage after doing it, because we weren't able to articulate fully our message, how we felt, and people nitpick. Everybody gets a little slice out of your quote and they tie it in with somebody else's quote, and it fits the narrative that they have. Yeah, I mean, I remember looking back at articles when Project Unify was being talked about, and I'm pretty sure I had written that statement out and then spoke it. It was on a paper and I memorized it or whatever, something like that, because I did not want my message to be miscued or twisted in any possible way. So yeah, the media, it's not friendly. They're not, unless it's for sports. when it comes to anything that has to do with your beliefs, you need to be prepared and understand fully how you're going to explain yourself.
And my another question was actually to what you said early on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things, like we have talked about history going back to 1960s and now. A lot of the things like with kneeling, there's always like it seems the exact opposite, which it's not about,
Mm-hmm.
You had that even within the team.
Mm-hmm.
For playing, you need to have a collaborative front to even win or just have a good game. How was that experience? Because you said some of the players, especially white players, it was different, that the viewpoints were different, the belief systems were different. How was it like to play and stay with them?
Playing with them wasn't hard. Everybody, when you get to college, you understand basketball, whatever sport you're in, it's a business. You got to win in order to get money, in order to get new uniforms, whatever. Keep your coach. We didn't, clearly, but that part wasn't difficult. It was, and I still think now we have conversations about the election and stuff like that. It gets hard. And I grew up in Ohio's a swing state, right? But before Trump, we were blue, and I grew up in a very progressive household and, believed all these different things. And then when I got to the South, I was shocked. I was not prepared for half of the things that were said to me, and I just didn't know how to handle it. And it's a culture thing. And there were, I'll say this, about probably 75% of my team was from the South, still is. So fighting between those beliefs and how you grew up is very challenging. But I think we all had a respect for one another, that we weren't going to let that difference be taken out on the court. It might have stopped people from communicating with certain people. I will say a fight almost broke out when we had a conversation. So those two were split for quite some time. But I think no matter what side of the spectrum that you're on, you have to respect people's opinions, and you have to respect where they came from. And you can argue about it all you want, but there has to be a mutual understanding of where you came from, how you feel, and even if I don't agree with you, I still respect you as a person. So. Anyone else?
So I have a question about what you had mentioned about not being prepared to speak to the media. That kind of blows my mind, because your coach at the time had been in media for decades prior to being your coach.
Yep.
Do you feel like now you're better prepared to speak to the media about stuff like this, or just in general? Or what was your, I guess, mindset at the time, because you weren't prepared and you, like I said, had a coach who was or do you think maybe his experience in the media stopped him from preparing you guys to an extent?
I think, and I'm not quite sure, but this is just my opinion about maybe what happened with him, is I think he didn't want to take away our message in telling us what we needed to say and kind of training us, if that makes sense. The way it felt was it wanted to be very honest, very personal, whatever. But I do think that the lack of not even understanding how somebody in the media would phrase a question was difficult for us. I think now, just because I have spoken to the media before in the different leadership positions that I'm in, I'm prepared to speak about situations like this. But yes, I do think it hindered our progression, if that makes sense. We came across as a little uneducated in what we were talking about and what our beliefs were. And I think that might have fueled the fire for other people to say, well, they're not fully answering these questions. They're not really able to articulate how they feel in a way that everybody can understand it. And that fueled stereotypes. and everything else. So like I said, media training is super important. And I do think it was a little weird for him not to give it to us, but especially because, like you said, he was an analyst for years before, spoke to the media all the time. But in my heart, I would like to believe that it was because he didn't want to mislead our message with something he said on his own.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point you made about not knowing how to talk about it. Because I mean, very few people come out of high school knowing how to talk about race in general. So of course the fans didn't either. With all the resources out now since it's 2020, how do you think the UA, which is a university where they teach people, can teach all its students, not just its African and African American studies students, how to talk about this?
That's a very opinionated question. And I'll give
Yeah,
you my
my bad. You don't
opinion.
have
No,
to-
it's fine. I'm completely fine with giving you my opinion on things. It might be controversial, but I think as a freshman, the way university studies or university whatever class, learning about campus or how to use Microsoft or whatever, something that we've used since the 3rd grade, a class on racial issues that either the University of Arkansas has faced personally or the South has faced that they've been a part of should be in the curriculum. I think it's very important in any university that has all different forms of life that come from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different states. You need to have a class where you can start to be able to understand the other people that are in your classes. I mean, 80% of my classes, I was the only Black person and I'm only half Black. So I don't even fully comprehend a full African American Black male's perspective on things. I can ask. That's the type of person I am. I'm gonna ask you how you feel so I can understand. But a lot of people in the South have not been surrounded by those kinds of people. And so I think those classes should be mandatory.
Dr. Robinson should teach those classes.
He should. Yes.
Shoot, and Katie too. She taught me.
Yeah, and like it would be so beneficial because at the end of the day, we gotta work together.
Mhm.
I agree.
And
couldn't
you're gonna
agree
meet different types of life in any job that you have. So
You're
if you
gonna
don't
meet
know
a
how
man.
to interact with them in college, you're not gonna be successful in your business. And I have a very entrepreneurial like mind, so I want everybody who has ever experienced something that I haven't to give me their opinion on how I can be better or how my business can be better. And I think that's how the world should run, but it doesn't that way.
Well, I don't disagree with anything you've said. The problem is what you say is not universally believed and accepted. And because you have people who don't feel the way you do, it is not part of the core. And I mean, and beyond this campus, like, you know, at the state level, and the University Perspectives course that you were referencing, it's what you took. You have so many different faculty members. Everybody is supposed to have a little section on diversity, but not everyone is prepared to really take the deep enough dive in that to provide you with the context and the training that you might feel is would be helpful to you in your development. So it's what I teach. So I'm completely on your side on this issue. But
and the other problem is our professors they don't live that life either.
Right.
I will say, being in the South, that's just kind of how it is. And as unfortunate as that might be, it's how life is. And I think our election is kind of seeing the same thing. You see our morals in our country are being debated. Things on LGBTQ being reversed is being talked about now. And it's like, why are we going backwards? So I think we have a lot of progression to do. Everybody does. I don't know all the answers. You guys don't know all the answers, but it's about working together and figuring it out. But we can't seem to do that sometimes either. So I don't know the answer. to any
Thank you.
others.
I actually would like to know your opinion or what your thoughts are on how you tie so many of the people at the University of Arkansas together, because
Mhm.
advancement happens where you play basketball games, right? And as people pass through that, generations will go through, and you've not just nailed, but try to bring awareness to a cause that is very important. So what do you want all these generations of classes that will go through to take away in terms of the issue of progress that we need to make?
That's a very difficult question and hard to pick just one thing that you would want to be your main focus. But
You can do top 3 if you want.
okay, well, I need some time. I mean, I think we need to learn more about the deep history of slavery. I think that's probably my biggest thing. I think America has whitewashed so much of our history that half of the things that I read on Twitter, I have never seen in my entire life. And I want to learn more about it because it's my history, not only as an African American woman, but as an American, that's my history. And I think we have tried to make America look like the greatest country in the world. And I'm not saying it's not great. It has its flaws, but it's great. But I think our image of ourselves is to look as perfect as possible to other people, that we can't dig deep enough to look at the atrocities that we've committed against the people that live here and how it affects multiple generations down the road. So I think once we have those types of classes that don't just tell us Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, whatever, and 92, I don't know, and that Rosa Parks sat in the front of the bus. Like, I know that. A lot of us know that. I want the deep issues. Why things happen this way, why somebody was lynched by the KKK because he decided that he was going to go exercise his right to vote. Stuff like that, stuff that hits deep and that will make people realize that that wasn't 100 years ago. It was our grandparents. Like they did that stuff. They lived through those situations. So I think once we can peel back the mask that we put on ourselves to make us look perfect, then we have a shot of being better.
Wow. Yeah.
That was very passionate. I've never spoken like that before, guys. This is new.
Thank you. I appreciate you speaking openly.
You better preach.
Yes, of course. Yes, Ashley, education is key. And my mom, she works for an education company. So I've been told for my entire life, I better go get a degree. It was not up for debate. I had to go get one. So education is important. It helps you learn so many different things. And we
Also
need to go
expensive.
farther back in it.
And also expensive.
It is expensive. That's another story. It should not be this expensive. I don't pay to go to college, luckily, but the fact that y'all do is crazy. But I can't agree with Bernie that education can be free because that doesn't really make too much sense. But I would like for it to be free. Yeah. Just play sports, guys. That's my other piece of advice. Play sports. But any other questions? I have time. I really do. I only have one assignment to turn in for school, so we're good.
If we think of other questions later, because can we reach out and have a conversation?
Yes, please do. Email me. I can put my email in here. I'm good to talk about whatever. I'm a very talkative person if you haven't realized that already. I can go on for hours.
I think one that was in the list of questions, so feel free to, if it's yours, that I just wanted to ask, if it's okay, is when you were mentioning playing sports, and I'm sure, I don't know if the rest of you can say this, but if I could, I would. protests in sports seem to always gain a lot of scrutiny. So how do you feel about the role of athletes in raising awareness? I'm reading it, sorry, in raising awareness about political issues and general human rights issues?
Obviously, I think it's very important. That's why I did it. And I'm in a group in the SEC where we have minorities from every school in different sports talking about how the SEC can better our platform, what they can do to help us in gaining knowledge, gaining traction. And it's new this year, and it's very new. We haven't figured everything out, but my point in bringing that up is examples. So some schools, football teams have Black Lives Matter patches on their things or their jerseys, or somebody had a white hand and a black hand shaking hands, and some people were able to have like Breonna Taylor on a warm-up shirt or something like that. And that part is great, but what we were told is we were going to have a shirt given to us by the SEC that just says together. Together it means more. And so as an athlete, I brought up that that's very vague. That means nothing. Being together, we're supposed to be together. We're a conference. We meet all the time. So what is hard about sports and protesting and politics and money is that the SEC cannot take a complete stand on something, if that makes sense, because their money is at stake. So they left it up to the schools. Whatever the school wants to do, we're going to have an equality patch on our jerseys. We're allowed to speak with our coach if we want a different warm-up shirt that has something else on it. We need to have that conversation. But I would say in college, it's very difficult because it is a money-making system. It flows in and out. More money is generated every year. The better you are, money gets taken away, the worse you are, stuff like that. So it's hard for colleges even in professional sports. People are, Colin Kaepernick got his contract snatched and he had to figure out a different way to learn to make money. But I think it is important for athletes to stand up for something that they believe in. I'm not just an athlete. Obviously, I have done other things in my life to put me in this position that I am. I have to keep a certain grade point average to even be able to play basketball. So I got to be some type of smart to do what I do. So I think what makes it so hard for athletes in college to protest, though, is the money aspect and that people view everything as so political. Not everything is meant to be political. Sometimes it's just morals. And I want to express my morals in the same way that you're allowed to. You can swing your Biden or Trump flag all on your car or whatever, but if I do it, I'm looked at different than how somebody else is, which I think is really hard about athletes, is our identity is so tied in our sports that sometimes we're not able to be looked at as just people that have ideas. So that needs to change. It does, but it's a difficult thing to change because college sports is such a business, unfortunately.
Thanks.
I have a question. You're graduating this year, if I'm correct. How are
Yes.
you planning to continue working in these issues, or maybe helping other athletes in a similar position in the future?
That's a difficult question because this year, like I said, I'm the chair of the community engagement for SAC. So I've really found that I love working in communities and bettering communities. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to kind of work in a way that deals with protesting. So I'm not quite sure how to do that part yet, but I don't know. I want to be a photographer. So I guess if I can go to protests and take pictures and just be there in the front lines and say, this is what's really happening. I don't want to hide it. I don't want to Photoshop it. This is what it is. So I guess that would be my first step once I get out of NBA photography, because that's really what I want to do. But any type of photography would be cool. I have a journalism degree, so if somehow I find my way at a newspaper, being as honest and open and not really caring if I lose my job. I think that's how all journalists should be. You shouldn't be, yes, photojournalism is great. You shouldn't be afraid to lose your job because of something that you believe in. That's kind of been my motto as I progress in my degree. Because to me, money's not really everything. It's nice, but I can live on some ramen noodles for a little bit. I've done it, so it's okay. But yes, I'm trying to figure that out. I want to make a couple different businesses, so we'll see. Got a lot of life ahead of me, so hopefully somewhere I can help people.
Jailyn, the atmosphere for athletic protests at the college level has changed a bit. When you kneeled, it was extraordinarily controversial. I remember it distinctly. Now there appears to be an acceptance, maybe that's the best word, if not a welcoming. That might be too much, particularly in the SEC, but an acceptance that you have the right to protest and that you will protest. But do you think that that acceptance is a means of controlling how you do it and the impact of your doing it?
Mm-hmm. I never thought of it like that way, but I would say yes. That's a very deep question. I have to think about it for a second.
Oh, there are more.
I know there are, and that's okay. I love deep response, like deep answers and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I would agree that it is. We have kind of come to the agreement, or we have seen people kneel, that it doesn't have the shock factor that it does anymore. The argument will always continue, whether it's disrespecting the flag or not. And I think a lot of people now, because of 2020, have switched their views. I know I saw on Twitter when George Floyd died and people were protesting and the NBA did all of their stuff. People were like, we need to apologize to the Arkansas women's basketball team with how we treated them. And I was like, wow, it took y'all 4 years to figure this out. But it doesn't hold the same shocking value as it did before. It's more common to see people protest now. And I think it depends on, like, let's say I put a shirt on, right, that has Black Lives Matter. That's going to trigger something. It might not trigger everything, everybody's opinions, but maybe if I put Breonna Taylor was innocent, or Breonna Taylor shouldn't have been shot, or what's his name, Walter something deserved better, that might trigger some different things, because now I'm attacking the police when I say that. I'm attacking how you handle the situation. I'm not attacking just the big picture. It's a personal attack on a certain police station or precinct, whatever. So I do think protesting needs to switch in how we do it if we want to continue making people aware, if that makes sense. There's something new needs to happen, because people are just going to look at someone kneeling and be like, I don't like it, but whatever, you're going to do what you do. So
yeah, I'm not sure you've made it there to that part. The South is still the South. And even though I know that might be overly simplified, but I'm not sure that kneeling is not a big deal. I still think that it is a big deal, and that it depends on where you are, of course, and how much attention you receive. But I do think that some of the organizations work with student athletes to try to manage how they express themselves in protests. And this is not a value judgment. It's just that even in this era of acceptance, there is still a sense that we want you to do it a certain way. We prefer that you do it a certain way.
There'll always be boundaries around it. You can't really dip out of those.
I guess let me be more direct. I think if you kneel today, I think you get some of those same comments that you received back in 2016.
I would agree. I would agree. I don't know if it would be to the extent that we did before.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. That there would be more people who would argue your right to do it. I mean, the chorus of opposition was it was deafening. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised that there was opposite, but the degree to which I heard it was surprising.
Yeah.
It was almost as if nothing else in the world had what could have
Mattered.
been worse. Yeah. It was,
Yes. I mean, it was surprising to see that our I guess I can say our because I live here. The legislation in Arkansas, it reached that level. To have Asa Hutchinson say, I'm going to take $3.3 million away from the University of Arkansas because that's what the women's basketball team makes. I was like, what? Why are you taking money? If you're going to do anything, punish us. Like, it has nothing to do with the school. It's our decision, whatever. But, I mean, yeah, our funding for our school was being looked at and talked about, and I was
talked about. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was ever serious, but they were talking.
Yeah, but I didn't, and I guess being a freshman, I didn't understand that either. I didn't think that it would even get to that level. I thought I'm just making a stand. Like, this is my belief. I never thought that I would have Asa Hutchinson adding the Razorback women's basketball team saying, I'm taking away some money from the school because of your actions. I'm like, wow, so you're going to use your power to do what you believe in, and I can't use the little power that I have to do mine. So it was frustrating and surprising, but not as surprising as I think I thought of it before. Now I understand. I'm a little bit older, so.
Maybe you should become poli-sci major and go into,
Maybe.
You could make some good laws.
I was watching the debate yesterday and I was like, man, maybe I should have went into politics, but I'm not nice when I argue. I don't think I would have been made anything. People would not have liked me if that was the case. But we'll see. Maybe.
But do you believe that the only way to remove this necessity to do something that shocks people, like, saying like, oh, Breonna Taylor was innocent. Rather than that, the laws changed quicker than they do. You have to do those things.
I will say what's so crazy about our government right now is that we have so many people that have lifelong seats or something along that line. They're able to be in power for so long that the beliefs that they have been brought up believing, they're going to enforce them now because they're not gone. So I think it's important to have people like AOC in power to challenge people's beliefs and to challenge laws like that and say, this is not correct. I know this is what you believe in, but we have moved on and we are in a different time period. But I think that's the one thing I would say needs to change the most is people need to not be able to be in power for this long. They're not, people get older. They don't understand everything that's going on. My grandparents don't understand technology that great. They just figured out the Apple TV like a month ago. So when you have people that don't keep up with what's happening, you need a change of power. And you need to elect people that you believe in. And again, our morals need to be looked at a little bit. Oh my goodness, what just happened? Sorry, you guys disappeared from my computer for a second. I got confused. But anyways, yes, lifelong seats need to go.
Well, Jailyn, I appreciate you and sharing your thoughts. It's been great hearing your experience. I mean, it was terrible. It was. But the hearing you talk about it, seeing how you survived it and grown from it, and how you're still involved in protests and trying to improve people's lives, that's really good to see. I'm glad that experience didn't cause you to move away from that part of you. And, yeah, and I do think it's important for students to understand, and you are a freshman, that it takes courageous acts that challenged the status quo
Mm-hmm.
to change the status quo. And I think one of the things that you probably understand better now, just hearing you talk about your experience, is that you have to learn how to leverage the change that the administration wants to see, or you want to see, and what the administration wants to see, try to leverage that as a tool of a negotiation in changing what you want to see changed. And that for a freshman was asking way too much. But I think you were spot on in trying to get the attention of people and draw that to something that you thought was important to highlight and showcase. So
I'll say this. I think no matter the little amount of power that you have, I didn't have a lot. I just was a girl on a basketball team. But I think you have to use your resources and every piece of information, person to your advantage. And as political as it sounds, and as much as politicians do it, you got to do it for your favor. And, you know, it might not sound the best when I put it that way, but you kind of have to use the people around you. And that's something that I've definitely grown in understanding is every piece of resource that I have will somehow tie together in order for me to complete something. So.
Well, I think it's interesting that as small as you thought you were, Chancellor Steinmetz knew who you were.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got to go to SEC meetings with him and sit down with him and have dinner. So it's been a crazy 5 years here, and nothing that I would have ever expected in my entire life. But I'm very proud and happy of the things that I have gone through. And honestly, sometimes you got to struggle in order to figure out what you want to do with your life. So.
And you did what the men wouldn't do.
Yeah, that's.
I remember that too.
Yes.
I remember that. And I always thought you and your fellow teammates were so courageous.
Oh, thank you.
And you didn't know, of course you couldn't know, but there were conversations about you going on in administration and what you were doing. And 201, no one felt like you were wrong. Like there was a sense that we needed to figure out how we could help, but we also had to deal with the challenge that we were receiving from the broader community. So
yeah. And I think it definitely was a challenge for everyone's administration, students. I mean, just normal people that, you know, saw what happened. They were struck and weren't sure how to react to what was happening. And so,
absolutely.
But that's what you want to do with protests. You want to sometimes cause chaos. You need people to see it for something else than what they saw it as before. So
that's right.
Yes.
Well, thank you, and
Thank you,
really appreciate you taking the time, and you were great. And
thank you. I was nervous.
Keep up the good work.
Thank
Let
you.
me know
I
if I can
appreciate
help
it.
you in any way.
Okay.
Well, okay.
Thank you. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. So for next week, everybody, I think Dr. Robinson is left. Okay. Real quick, I do not believe